Dago Wab, Ganny, garlic bread, pizza slinging, spaghetti bending, Victimone, Perry Como, Luciano Pavarotti, solo meal, non-singer motherfucker.
You gold teeth, gold chain wearing, fried chicken and biscuit eating, monkey ate baboon, big thigh, fast running, high jumping, spear chucking, 360-degree basketball dunking, titsoon, spade, mulling yarn. Take your fucking pizza and go the fuck back to Africa.
You little slanty-eyed, Mino-speaking American, own every fruit and vegetable stand in New York, bullshit Reverend Sun Young Moon, some Olympic 88 Korean kickboxing Sabaran bitch.
You Goya bean eating, 15 in a car, 30 in an apartment, pointy shoes, red wearing, menudo, meter, Puerto Rican cocksucker? Yeah, you!
It's cheap. I got good price for you. Now catch it. How I'm doing? Chocolate egg cream drinking, bagel and deluxe, banana for this Jew asshole.
Yo! Hold up! Time out! Time out! Y'all take a chill!
As the previous clip from Spike Lee's film Do the Right Thing shows, racial slurs and insults trip easily from people's lips. More and more, it seems, the dividing lines within our society are being drawn along how we are physically different from one another, what W.E.B. Du Bois called the differences of color, hair, and bone, what everyone understands as visible racial differences. This program examines the inner workings of this system and tries to unlock the secret of how and why race matters so much to people. We're going to do this by talking and listening to a leading expert in the field. Stuart Hall is Professor of Sociology at the Open University in Britain and is a key figure in the development of what has come to be known as cultural studies. His many writings now enjoy an international and global audience. On the subject of race, culture, and society, we could not be in better or more insightful hands. I should point out that in what follows, Hall's principal focus is not on the effects of racism. He takes those as his starting point. Now, as a result, some people have accused him of not paying enough attention to the practical outcomes and violence associated with racism. Nothing could be further from the truth. Hall is passionately concerned with the psychological, cultural, and physical violence that racism inflicts. But he believes that to better fight against it, we have to first understand the logic of how it works. He wants to understand how racism is cultivated in our imaginations, of how it works in our heads, so that we can better combat it on the streets. What racism as a philosophy contends is that there is a natural connection between the way people look, the differences of color, hair, and bone, and what they think and do, with how intelligent they are, with whether they're good athletes or not, good dancers or not, good workers, civilized or not. Racists believe that these characteristics are not a result of our environment, but of our biological genes. That blacks, for instance, are born not as intelligent as whites. Hall's basic argument is that all attempts to show this scientifically, that blacks are not as intelligent as whites, have failed. And yet there is a persistent and widespread belief in the inferior mental capacities of black folk. To understand why this should be the case, Hall argues that we have to pay attention not to the objective facts of the situation alone, but to the stories that the culture spins for us about what the physical differences we are born with mean. This involves examining the discourses that surround race, taking what he calls a discursive position. That is, analyzing the metaphors, the anecdotes, the stories, the jokes that are told by culture about what physical racial differences mean. In fact, when we do this, we see that historically, things like skin color have been given many different meanings over the years. There is nothing solid or permanent to the meaning of race. It changes all the time. It shifts and slides. That's why the title of this program is Race, the Floating Signifier. what racial difference signifies is never static or the same. This sounds very theoretical and abstract, but Hall's motivations for insisting on this strategy are not at all academic. It is only once we understand how racism works that we can struggle against it. And understanding it takes hard, analytical, intellectual work. The lecture that Hall delivered on this subject at Goldsmiths College in London, which we'll see shortly, is a starting point for this work. But first, we're going to see an interview I conducted with him, where I asked him to talk a little bit about why classification, putting people into different groups, is so important to human beings, and how race fits into that. I also asked him to address the political implications of his analysis.
In human culture, I would say, the propensity to classify subgroups of human types, to break up the diversity of human societies into very distinct typings according to essentialized characteristics, whether physical characteristics or intellectual ones or ones of characteristics of the body and so on. This is a very profound kind of cultural impulse. In a way, it's a very positive cultural impulse because we now understand the importance of all forms of classification to meaning. Until you classify things in different ways, you can't generate any meaning at all. So it's an absolutely fundamental aspect of human culture. What is, of course, important for us is when the systems of classification become the objects of the dispositions of power. That's to say, when the marking of difference and similarity across a human population becomes a reason why this group should be treated in that way and get those advantages, and that group should be treated in another. It's the coming together of difference or categorization and power, classification and power. The use of classification as a system of power, which is really what is very profound. And one then sees that across a range of different characteristics. One sees it in gender, the ascription of clear masculine and feminine identities, and the assumption from that you can predict whole ranges of behavior and aspirations and opportunities from this classification. Classification is a very generative thing. Once you've classified, a whole range of other things kind of fall into place as a result of it. But another important point about classification is that it awakens, let me put it another way. It is a way of maintaining the order of any system. And what is most disturbing is anything that breaks the classification. So, it's not just that you have blacks and whites, but of course one group of those people are much more positively valued than the other group. That's how power operates. But then anything that attempts to ascribe to the black population characteristics which used to be reserved for the white ones generates enormous tension in the society. Mary Douglas, the anthropologist, describes this in terms of what she calls matter out of place. She says every culture has a kind of order of classification built into it. And this seems to stabilize the culture. You know exactly where you are, who the inferiors and who the superiors are, and how each has a rank, etc. And what disturbs you is what she calls matter out of place. What she means by that is, you don't worry about dirt in the garden because it belongs in the garden. But the moment you see dirt in the bedroom, you should do something about it because it doesn't symbolically belong there. And what you do with dirt in the bedroom is you cleanse it, you sweep it out, you restore the order, you police the boundaries, you restore the hard and fixed boundaries between what belongs and what doesn't, inside, outside, cultured, uncivilized, barbarous and cultivated, and so on. And race is, of course, one of the principal forms of human classification which have all these negative and positive attributes kind of built into it. So that in a way they function as a common sense code in our society. So in a way you don't need to have a whole argument, about are blacks intelligent. The moment you say they're blacks, already the equivalences begin to trip off people's mind. Blacks then, sound bodies, good at sport, good at dancing, very expressive, no intelligence, never had a thought in their heads, a tendency to barbarous behavior. All these things are clustered simply in the classification system itself. What I'm interested